Urban explorers who roam remote industrial ruins often encounter bizarre and mysterious spiritual phenomena. They rarely report on their experiences, but Weird World viewer Jack has provided this exclusive on some of his. Jack says that he grew up in the wastelands of industrial Britain, which are dotted all over the UK. As his own small village lay in the middle of such an area, his whole childhood was spent exploring it, and he eventually helped to found the Urbex, or Urban Exploration Community. This brought him into contact with explorers around the world, and he explains that one very important rule of the community is to keep the forum on topic and refrain from any mention of ghosts and other spiritual phenomena. However, having always been a believer and witnessed ghostly occurrences since early childhood, he became very aware that it was commonplace for Urbex explorers to stumble upon those unexplained and sometimes terrifying events. To those whose nerves seemed broken by their experience, he would offer a shared explore which would always calm and settle their minds. Jack's speciality became underground exploration, such as old mine workings, drains and culverts. He became aware that early miners, working throughout the great ore field of the North Pennines in the UK, had many spiritual experiences. Some were so strong that the haunting events would occur long after the mines had closed. The early miners called the spirits knockers. This was because, as a miner set to work with his tools, sometimes a strange tapping or knocking would be heard from within the rock around them. The miners soon learned that the tapping was a helpful contact and that they should move themselves to the source of the tapping and dig there, where often good ore would be found. Alternatively, sometimes the location they'd just left would see the mine ceiling collapse. The knockers, for the early miners, were good spirits. It was also said that the knockers would materialise accompanied by a smell of tobacco burning, or sometimes a glimpse of a flash of light nearby. Jack's first experience of a knocker happened during a shared exploration of a lead mine with friends. At that time, he knew nothing of the knockers, his main aim being to capture photographs of the mine, as was that of his friends. To avoid his lighting interfering with theirs, he ventured 100 metres or so along the mine passage, from where he started snapping photos. It wasn't long before he smelled a strange odour, like damp tobacco burning. It was very distinct within the mine air, and he became somewhat annoyed that one of his friends was smoking as he continued to take photos. The tunnel he was in was close to a T-junction within the mine, inside which lay a puddle of water. Randomly on that water, he began seeing the odd flash of light, much like someone with a torch walking towards it from the side and out of his sight. The particular mine they were in was considered a touristy one that many day trippers sought to visit. On that particular day, he was feeling a bit bored but in a mischievous mood, and accordingly hatched a plan. He stood to one side and turned off his own lighting, then waited in the darkness for the visitors to round the corner, intending to jump out and scare them. He waited and waited, watching as the flickering light reflected off the puddle. The light flashes were gradually growing in frequency until the point where he would jump out. However, nothing happened, while before him was nothing but complete darkness. No people, no torches, nothing. He turned his own lighting back on to see if he could spot them. Before him was an empty mine tunnel heading away into the distance with apparently no side passages off it. He wandered further along it in case he was missing something, but the tunnel led away for hundreds of metres and had no passages off it from where people could be advancing. Feeling a bit confused and disappointed, he gathered up his camera gear and walked back to his friend. He casually explained what had happened, and his friend freaked out to such an extent he had never seen before. A grown man literally shaking as he gathered his equipment, then rapidly strode back out of the mine. Pacing behind, Jack tried asking what was up, but his friend couldn't speak through his panic and fear, even once out of the mine. It was later that day that the friend sent him an email, within it linking to many articles that spoke of the knockers, the mine spirits that frequented the mines. The tobacco odour and light flashes Jack had experienced suggested that he had met one. Jack soon found that spiritual experiences within the old abandoned ore mines are quite common. Another strange event occurred at a very old ore mine, which has records of its existence dating back to the 1450s. Once inside, there were spots that had remained untouched for centuries. Back then, miners used fire setting, which involved lighting a fire against a rock to heat it up and then throwing water onto it. The rock would then shatter into pieces to be gathered up. Within those areas could be found children's handprints pressed into the clay dirt. Children had clearly been employed in the fire-setting process hundreds of years before, and the mine children would soon pay the urbex explorers a visit. The mine had a unique layout of a central passage with multiple vast chambers on each side along its length. On this day, Jack had gone with another explorer who was wanting to find some crystals. Jack's plan was to explore around one of the vast chambers opposite in the hope of finding old relics from the mine's past. The pair ended up some distance apart, around 400 metres. As Jack slowly made his way around his chamber, a piece of debris hit his mine helmet, which was not unusual, as small pieces of roof could sometimes fall. A minute or so later, another piece of debris hit him, but this time it caught his full attention. His experience put him on high alert to run, aware that the roof had the potential to be about to drop. As he turned around quickly, he spotted what had hit him on the ground. It was moving and slowed to a stop, and on picking it up, he saw that it was a rounded piece of clay. The clay had been rolled into a perfect ball, like a marble. Jack assumed that his friend must have thrown the ball, but on looking around, realised that his friend wasn't there. Jack could hear his distant tools chipping away in the next chamber. Given his experiences by then, Jack knew immediately who the culprits were, spirits in the mine. As he wandered around, every now and then another ball of perfectly moulded clay would hit his helmet. He pretended not to notice them, but eventually picked up and pocketed each one. By the end, he had collected over a dozen of those small clay balls. When he rejoined his friend, he was furious and began shouting at Jack for throwing things at him. The friend ranted and raved for some time, after which Jack quietly revealed his collection of clay balls and explained that it had also been happening to him. His friend's face went white as a sheet, and he instantly realised what they'd both been experiencing: mine spirits. In fact, Jack believed they were the child spirits who had been playing with them. The incredible physical experience had Jack in awe, but his friend promptly ran out of the mine. Finally, Jack remembers a New Year's Eve party held deep inside a mine, attended by a group of around 14 urbex members. With alcohol and food flowing, the event was great fun, although Jack made a mental note of those who would slip off for a few minutes and return. He assumed they were having toilet breaks, and eventually he wandered a little deeper into the mine for the same purpose. He was met by a surreal sight when he realised that several of those who appeared to have gone for a toilet break had instead taken a small handful of food from the party and left it as offerings for the mine spirits. He realised that despite many never mentioning the mine spirits, they'd clearly experienced them during their explorations and were leaving offerings as a thank you for getting safe passage. It confirmed to him that the knockers within the old mines had always been good spirits to the urbex community.